welcome to a special edition of the GuestX podcast. We are at the Phocuswright Summit in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and where we are talking to some of the top experts in the industry about the future of guest experience. And I tell you what, we've got the man of the hour, Pete, who's the managing director of Phocuswright, joined us. And Pete, you've actually been with Phocuswright like 14 years, right?
It's been a good run.
It's been
a good run.
It's going to continue to be a good run.
It's going to continue to be a good run.
I just think about the changes in travel that you've seen over the past 14, I mean, let alone the past 24 months, right? Which the first 12 probably could not have prepared you for. But I mean, that's really cool to be able to watch all that and be a part of it and really be looking from the data standpoint, which is what you guys do, documenting it, seeing where it's headed. That's really cool.
It's great. And we were kind of, the research business was founded at the beginning of online travel. So we've kind of traced the market as it's kind of, climbed through the years.
Yep.
And amazingly enough, and this probably makes sense if you think about the pandemic, we saw the biggest jump in online penetration happen last year. So we jumped from 50% to 55% of people using digital channels.
Yeah.
So mobile and websites to book travel. And, because people were sitting at home and they were kind of on their phones, they were forced into digital channels, and that goes across demographics. So it'll be interesting to see as we start to kind of go through these different phases of recovery. We're convinced that that's going to stick. So people are going to continue to use those online channels.
Real quick, because I'm always curious, the shift, is that in booking and in search, or is it both? Because one of the questions I've got is, are we continuing to see? I know that searching has been really moved to mobile. Are people now booking a lot of these stays via mobile, or are they still searching on the mobile and then going to the desktop?
Yeah, I mean that varies for sure across demographics. So, and you see companies. Hotel Tonight is a really good example of a company that was built mobile first, and they were really the pioneers of that.
Yeah.
So Sam Shank built this business around. Initially, it was last minute hotel bookings only on mobile. So day of travel, he gives you a curated list of hotels. You can book it through the app. No website. He kind of evolved back to the website to kind of capture a bigger share of it. He was looking to boost his valuation, and look what happens. He's bought by Airbnb, so he had a nice outcome. But Hopper is another business that is mobile first, no web experience, and it caters towards the younger demographic. Yeah. So the Gen Zs, the millennials, they're on their phones all the time. They're used to it. I've used Hopper a bit, and it's a really interesting user experience. Notifications, just bombarded with notifications, and they're just pulling you back in, and that's just the attention span, right? Of all travelers, but mostly that demographic of travelers.
Short and last minute. I mean, that's what they're trying to gather.
And what will be really interesting for our listeners as they now, they've announced, although they're not going to come on the GuestX podcast because they're not really ready to talk about public.
But we're not done yet. We'll see if we can get them on.
That's right. We got a day left. But obviously get into vacation rentals. And I think some of that mobile first will be interesting to see too if there's changes across verticals. Because you're spending a lot more on a vacation rental, a 7-day leisure vacation, than you are on a flight or a couple nights hotel stay when you're maybe more likely to be on business and those kind of things. Be interesting to see. I feel the same way about a $8,000 spend mobile first than I do an $800 spend on a couple of nights. But one last before we get into the conference, it is, as we keep referring to, it's really, I think, the top travel conference now. Congratulations for the biggest in the world. I think you've got some that are more, you've got like WTM up in London, which is more about getting kind of the buyers and sellers together. But this is really where I think people come to really get the insights into the industry. Where is it headed? So,
Well, minds come together here. So
That-
you've
they
got
do.
the
It's a
top
thought
executive.
leadership
Exactly.
conference.
This isn't like a massive conference where you've got thousands and thousands of people. You've really got the thought leaders coming together,
Yeah,
talking
and
about the data that you guys
it's
are
true.
bringing.
And as we thought about building this conference platform, it was always bring together the senior people from the industry. And we're not segment specific. We cross segments, but it's always about elevating the conversation. This year we have 52% C-level executives here. 75% are VPs and above. So it is really that senior crowd that comes. And also what differentiates this event from others is our research analysts are the ones that are programming the show. So it's not all the talking heads that come to the stage. Sure, we have the CEOs of TripAdvisor and Expedia and Kayak and other really senior leaders, but we also have really interesting panels where we cover topics. We spend a lot of energy on diversity. We think that's really important to hear from diverse voices because, that's what our traveling, audience is. And the industry needs to understand how to cater to that type of traveling audience. But you guys are all about guest experience. We're all about guest experience. We take pride in making sure that the conference runs down to the minute. So we know people's time is valuable. We also know they spend quite a bit of money to come to the conference. So we need to deliver them that sort of experience where they know that if they want to see a session, yesterday during the innovation pitches, we need to make sure that if UTIP is coming on at 3:50, we've got to keep the timing down to the second because they'll pop into the theater to see that one session, then they'll come back out and network and meet with customers and with partners. So it's
And
really
you guys have made that
really
very
important.
accessible, very easy to do. I mean, we use the app to basically communicate. It's been the most successful conference we've had doing.
I think
guest
I think I bet 70% of all of the conversations we're going to have here for the podcast have been looked through the app, and that's been helpful.
Well, that's how I did my networking in the past year too.
Yep.
Because it's the most direct way to reach your customers.
It definitely is. And I will say, and the other, just to plug Phocuswright, and then I think we want to see if Pete can give us a look into the future in his crystal ball. What good is data if it doesn't help you predict the future, right? As I tell our finance team, I don't need somebody to tell me the past. I lived it, right? But it's been great to watch Phocuswright evolve too. Just 6 years ago, with Exploring when we started, I think I got one of the big Phocuswright reports, and there was a little bit about vacation rental in it, but it was definitely the smaller segment. And now you guys are doing massive amounts of research on that segment. And as those reports keep coming out, we should, for our listeners, those are a great investment in that, and for what you get out of it, really reasonable for what it costs to put these reports on.
And
so
actually,
it's been cool to watch that.
When we publish this episode, we'll put a link directly to that report so you guys can download it.
Yeah, that would be great.
We don't do light. We tend to go really deep.
Yeah.
Because we know it's important that you can get light easy.
Yeah.
You can find light, but we really go really deep.
Yeah.
And it's always been kind of one of the flagship components of our research practices. We'll go deeper than anyone else into the different segments and really try to uncover those trends that that are not just a flash in the pan, that are going to kind of extend out into the future. So we can, a logical transition into that.
So that is the question. So we've talked about mobile. I think that's a good one. And I think that one probably, pandemic or not, people saw it coming, right? I mean, you first started with the airlines. I remember when Delta, when their search flipped, to 5149. I remember it was kind of a big deal in travel and things like that. Probably saw that one coming a little bit, probably just threw some fuel. What about, there's been a trend certainly to vacation rentals away from hotels. Business travel, I think, is a big question for people. So, what are some takeaways that you've gotten in looking at the research, hearing a lot of these presenters speak?
Yeah, for sure. So, a couple of big trends from the consumer side. Flexibility is one that, again, cross segments. It's something that came up early on in the pandemic where, travel sellers were forced to be flexible because that's what travelers needed in order to kind of get back to spending money on travel, because there's so much unease and the market needed that flexibility in order to drive bookings.
So you're talking cancellation policies?
Cancellation policies, flexibility of changing, airlines, for example.
Yeah.
Did we ever think that airlines were going to kind of zero out their change fees? Never, right? And,
Yeah.
I think we've been in this industry long enough. We know that they'll kind of creep them back in.
Sure.
But as of now, the airlines, sure, their basic economy fares, they kind of added the change fees and cancellation fees back in. But a regular economy ticket in many markets, at least here in the U.S., you can still change for free.
Yep.
And so that's something that the airlines realize that, look, we need to continue to offer this in order for people to be comfortable buying tickets, because there's a lot of unease in the market still. And same goes for hotels, vacation rentals.
Yeah, the cancellation, I mean, that was a big one, right? When COVID hit, because Airbnb gave everybody's money back. Hold it out of vacation rental. It has been tough because it's a different
I would
segment.
say it was the hardest segment to change for vacation rentals, period.
For sure.
Yeah.
As a business, we've always had, 14 to 30-day cancellation periods, if not even more extended than that. And there were very difficult cancellation policies for the guests to
part of that
accept.
is because a lot of our markets, there's a limited number of days when you can make max dollars. And they
absolutely
just couldn't
true.
have someone walk away with a 4th of July weekend 2 weeks before the 4th of July. But I think
Not
they're going
just
to be
that.
forced to, because you're seeing it before it's still going. And again, I think they'll rein it back a little, but it's going to be a question consumers continue to ask.
Yeah, we had a vacation rental in ski country, Colorado, and a lot of the platforms that we used would have a up to day of arrival, free cancellation, because they had to do that. And I'm from the industry, and I know that I can book that unit even if I got a cancellation within the last week. I could turn around and find somebody else to book it. But true, I mean, you've got to be really flexible, and that's something that we ask consumers about loyalty programs. So that's one thing that we've spent a bunch of time on trying to understand what's driving loyalty. And you saw hotels leading up to the pandemic offering lower rates if you sign up for those loyalty programs. It's not driving loyalty. It's just consumers can be trained that, okay, if I sign up for this, I get 10% off my rate. It's a no-brainer. I might not use this hotel ever again.
Right.
But those perks are now, the flexibility and cancellation policies are much more important for people to join loyalty programs.
So the question becomes, how do we start to implement that into vacation rentals?
Yeah, and I think part of the reason you and I talked about this, there's a bit of an issue in that, one, we're very fragmented. We don't have the flags, short of a CASA,
Or Marriott
30,
coming in.
40,000. Marriott, but
Problem with Marriott is that they still don't own the inventory.
exactly.
Right.
So even with CASA, it's tough to move people around the country. So they may be loyal to me, Matt Lloyd's vacation rentals, but that's only good if they plan on coming back to where my vacation rentals are. So it'll be interesting to see. I think it's going to have to be done at a bigger level.
Yeah, and maybe a company like Sonder that kind of caters to maybe a business traveler that they have a lot of urban inventory. If I'm traveling to New York for work, 5, 6, 7 times a year, I would consider using Sonder each time. I know I can get a consistent experience. I know I can get a bigger space. And so maybe there's a way to kind of create a loyalty program around that. Something to think about.
Yeah, no, that is a good point. And with them, getting ready to go public, being able to lower those acquisition costs, which I think the loyalty program will help them do. I mean, there's just a lot they can do with it at their size, where they can really start to leverage it. No, that's a really valid point. So, business travel, probably not something, at least in our leisure markets, that most of our listeners are dealing with. But what are you guys? It's a heavy topic of conversation.
Yeah, and I think the leisure markets should start to think about business travel, because business travel has changed.
Yeah.
We know it's changed. We're pretty optimistic that a lot of business travel will come back once we kind of get through this challenging phase where markets are open and especially international, people are trying to figure out, how do I get from point A to point B? What if I get sick in point B, and how do I get back? And all those just crazy considerations. But the nature of work is changing, and that's going to change business travel. And your executive teams are now in Seattle, in New York, in Atlanta, in Miami, in Chicago, and they need to come together as an executive team. So where might they want to come together? In a leisure destination, right? And we know that once leisure or business travelers come to a leisure destination, they often extend it, and they invite their family to come in for the weekend. And so that's really where the opportunity comes in for business travel and leisure destinations.
That's a very interesting.
There is an exploring partner in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, that has a home that, now get this, right, sleeps 96.
Whoa.
It has 21 suites. Every suite has its own bathroom. Has a 60-person movie theater room. And so I said, and it's packed. I mean, I think it was going to do $1 million in rentals, they said last year. But I asked them, who's renting this? A lot of businesses because men and women, everybody has their own bathroom, they have their own space. They were doing big corporate presentations to their leadership teams in this movie theater room. And it was fascinating. I'm like, but you're right, with all the remote workforce, you've got to still get together for the strategy type work.
We talk about that, right? Because you can't just have leadership everywhere without bringing them together at some point.
I think
it's
it's
true.
hard.
The Zoom calls are good for certain things, but for kind of top level strategy and really kind of digging deep, you can't really replicate that face to face there. So that's events is another topic that we think a lot about. How is this event changing? And we're in a conference center space right now, and as we were kind of building up to the pandemic, we identified maybe 15 hotels across the U.S. that we believed could kind of host us. But now that opens up quite significantly, because we don't need a huge theater, because people are interested in connecting and getting work done and doing business. And you can have a smaller space or more rooms within a certain space. You don't need that big theater anymore. So we're thinking about, how do we kind of evolve the experience at the conference, leveraging different types of properties. But what we think about, this is kind of core to who we are, is get the attendees here, kind of lock them in, and the party last night was a good example. You get them, networking. They can't really go too far. There's not a whole lot around here in Hollywood, Florida. And then, deals are done, relationships are consumed. It's a really good model that's worked well for us.
Well, I again, in my book, there is no other. I mean, if you want to hear from the thought leaders, if you really want to understand where the industry is going, it is the place to be. And we are thrilled to be here, and consider this another victory for Phocuswright, because it is. You guys have checked all the boxes. Another great conference.
Yeah, no, we're psyched to have you guys here as well. I think it's worked great for all of us, and just got to find a way to power through the next couple of days. We're not getting a lot of sleep, but
you got plenty of sleep time.
Plenty of sleep time,
right?
Now, I did see. Let's leave off on this. So next year's conference, did I see? Is it?
We're in Phoenix. Yes.
Phoenix, great place.
We're in the JW Marriott, Desert Ridge in Phoenix, and we've been there a few times in the past. We always love it. It's a little harder for Europeans to get there. There's not a lot of direct service, but people are willing to come because
it's a unique experience.
It's a unique experience. Yeah. So we're looking forward to it.
Well, great. And so, and I'm guessing on Phocuswright's website they can find the information for next year.
Absolutely.
Buying tickets and everything else.
Yeah, Phocuswrightconference.com.
Excellent.
I wouldn't miss it, guys.
No, thank you, Pete.
Yeah, thank you, guys.